Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be me covering another plot hole in the Crash Bandicoot franchise. The first video in this series that I did was talking about the inconsistency with the crystals, and I'll link that in the description. But this one's about Uka Uka and how he himself makes no sense. He is a plot hole since his introduction. And I'm just going to jump into it and show you the intro clip and explain why this is a plot hole and why it makes no sense.
None have dared to fail to break Uka Uka even once. But you, Cortex, you have failed me twice.
Great Uka Uka, it was that infernal Bandicoot.
From deep inside my temple prison, I sent you simple instructions to follow. But you lost the gems, you lost the crystals, and I have lost my patience.
So it's clear Uka Uka was a retcon. He wasn't always intended to be the mastermind pulling the strings behind the scenes. But Crash Warped introduced Uka Uka and said that deep from in his temple prison, from deep inside my temple prison, I sent you simple instructions to follow. So according to Uka Uka, he told Cortex to collect the gems and the crystals. It says, but you lost the gems, you lost the crystals, and I have lost my patience. So Cortex was following Uka Uka's orders, and Uka Uka was trapped in a temple prison by Aku Aku. And his orders were to make the Cortex commandos. Doesn't that seem counterproductive? Don't you think Uka Uka would want Cortex to free him from his prison? So it's kind of convoluted that Uka Uka wanted Cortex to make the Cortex commandos in the first game, but collecting the gems had nothing to do with the Cortex commandos. And then, if we're to follow this logic, he wanted Cortex to collect the crystals to make the space station side Cortex Vortex. So it's never explained how he was imprisoned or how long he was imprisoned. And it wasn't explained how he was giving orders to Cortex. We're just supposed to assume he was because of what they said, even though he was never referenced ever. So I'm going to show you another clip of what Aku Aku says about Uka Uka.
After many eons, my evil twin, Uka Uka, has been freed from his underground prison. Long ago, I locked him there to protect the world from his malice. Once again, he must be stopped.
So Aku Aku says, after many eons, my evil twin Uka Uka has been freed from his underground prison. Many eons. If you look up how long an eon is, it's 1 billion years. So he said many eons. So at the very least, Uka Uka has been trapped in that prison for 2 billion years. We're just going to assume that's a hyperbole and that he just meant a really long time. Because over 2 billion years seems a little excessive, and I doubt Uka Uka was trapped in that prison for that long, because I don't think that Aku Aku and Uka Uka were alive for many billion years. So you have Uka Uka, who has been trapped in this temple prison for an undisclosed amount of time, just a really long time, and he was sending messages to Cortex for somehow, through some means, to get the gems and the crystals. So this is what I think would make this a better story. That's the plot hole, and now I'm going to try and fix it for the Crash series. So in Crash Bandicoot 1, the colored gems were blue, red, green, yellow, purple, and orange. And then in Crash Bandicoot 2 and forward, it was blue, red, green, yellow, purple. The orange gem doesn't exist after Crash Bandicoot 1. So there has to be some significance to that gem in the first game, because Uka Uka says, you lost the gems, you lost the crystals, and I've lost my patience. So the gems were in Crash 1, And then in Crash 2, it was the crystals. So even though there's gems in Crash 2, Uka Uka says you'd failed him twice. So with the gem count being higher in Crash Bandicoot 1, it's to be assumed that those are the gems Uka Uka is talking about. So the 6 gems and the 25 crystals are what Uka Uka required when he was in his prison. He wanted Cortex to seek out these objects. So what I think would have been a better explanation, rather than the whole I've given you simple orders to follow, I think Aku Aku could have trapped Uka Uka, and the lock required the gems and the crystals. So I drew up a little picture on MS Paint. So this is the prison with the lock on it. These would be the 6 gems from Crash Bandicoot 1 when inserted into the lock. And then these would be the 25 crystals from Crash Bandicoot 2 that were put into the lock. So Uka Uka needed these gems and these crystals to be freed from his prison. He didn't want the gems and the crystals to make the Cortex Commandos and then have Cortex make a space station with the Cortex Vortex on it. He wanted to be freed. He says, "Since your bumbling has managed to set me free, I'm feeling generous." So I think the space station crashed down into the temple and cracked this lock. So it didn't require the gems and crystals to open it. But it wouldn't just take any explosion. It would take something from outer space and the velocity of a meteorite to smash through and break this open. So I think Uka Uka needed the objects, the artifacts, the gems, the crystals, to set him free. That's not the end of this Uka Uka plot hole, however. In Crash Bandicoot: The Wrath of Cortex, there's more inconsistencies with Uka Uka's history. So I'm going to play another clip for you. This one had automated YouTube subtitles, so they're not 100%, but I'm going to turn the audio up so you can hear it. So it's going to say Hookah Hookah instead of Uka Uka or Luka Luka. But I'm gonna play this clip, and then I'm gonna explain the other inconsistency that this created.
Attention, Uka Uka. What kind of diabolical scheme do you and Dr. Cortex have planned this time?
No schemes, just some old familiar faces dropping by for a visit.
No, not the elementals. Uka Uka, why did you release them? Don't you know what happened the last time they were free?
So they were responsible for a few earthquakes, floods, and that little ice age a couple of centuries back.
So the first point I want to point out is it says, just some old familiar faces dropping by for a visit. So this implies that Uka Uka has met them before, because they're familiar faces dropping by for a visit. And then he says they were responsible for a few earthquakes, floods, and that little ice age a couple centuries back. A century is only 100 years. A couple centuries would be 200 years. At the most, let's say 500 years. The ice age was literally 2.4 million years ago. So again, in Warped, they said eon, which meant billions. And now, Uka Uka's talking about the Ice Age like it was a couple hundred years ago. So how could Uka Uka and Aku Aku exist billions of years ago, experience the Ice Age, get locked in the prison, and get freed? Uka Uka was supposedly locked in the temple for billions of years. The Ice Age happened millions of years ago, so he would have already been locked in the temple. He would have never been able to meet the masks, so they wouldn't be familiar faces to him. So that pretty much wraps it all up. Uka Uka's introduction was sloppy, and then as they continued the franchise, it just got sloppier. Like I said, for the warped portion, we'll just say that Aku Aku was using a hyperbole and he didn't actually mean eons. It's just hard to believe that all these time frames are mixed up. So in conclusion, I feel as if Uka Uka and Aku Aku are way younger than they're implied to be when they're introduced. And I think that Uka Uka wanted the gems and crystals to be freed from his prison, not for Cortex to make Cortex commandos and a space station. So that's the end of the plot hole video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you don't agree with me, please let me know. And as always, thank you for watching and subscribing, and we'll see you in the next video. For the secret word of this video, let's say Temple Prison. Okay, guys, we'll see you in the next one. Take care.